You know how old I was when I found out what a union was and what it does? 23. There aren't words to describe how big a problem that is. Margaret Thatcher had just died, and they were trying to explain to stupid millennials like me why she was so great. Now, at the time, I didn't know that the Yom Kippur War started the 1973 oil crisis, plunging much of the Western world into recession, causing double-digit inflation in the UK, which Edward Heath's Tory government responded to by capping wages in the public sector, causing the coal miners to strike, which in turn caused a 2-month-long 3-day week to save electricity, prompting Heath to call a general election where the Tories won the popular vote but Labour won more seats. That sounds strangely familiar. So their leader Harold Wilson became Prime Minister, but Labour only had a minority government, so he raised miners' wages by 35%, called another election in October, won a 3-seat majority, and things were looking good for Labour, but the underlying problem of the government capping wages still persisted. Wilson resigned in 1976. They lost a few by-elections, losing their majority, and Wilson's successor, James Callaghan, refused to call a general election, choosing to instead continue the pay caps through to 1979, resulting in a massive public sector strike lasting through the coldest winter in 16 years, the infamous Winter of Discontent, which Margaret Thatcher responded to by calling for a vote of no confidence in Callaghan, which she won, which called a general election, which she won, and then started chipping away at the power of the unions by passing what laws she could, backing down from direct conflicts with unions where possible, and secretly enacting the Ridley Plan, which involved stockpiling and importing as much coal as possible, converting plants to run on oil where possible, and making benefits unavailable to striking workers. And when the big confrontation came in 1984, the government won, and the unions fell into permanent and ongoing decline. But now I do know all of that, and much more. So what are unions? What's the point of them? And why aren't we taught about them anymore? What's up with that? Let's set the scene. You're at work. You just dyed your hair blue the previous day, but it's fine because plenty of your co-workers have dyed their hair various different colours. You get called into your boss's office and he makes up some stupid shit about how blue is the colour of your competitor's product and you can't be seen to support the opposition, so you're fired. Now you know you don't have the money to challenge that in court, and he knows that too because he wasn't paying you very much. The only option left to you is to find another job. Now a union in its simplest form is just a group of people who work there, banding together and deciding they're not going to stand for that. With a union on your side, if the boss tries to do that to you, your co-workers will stick up for you. If he tries to fire you, they'll all go on strike. If any one of you isn't being paid enough, they all go on strike. If a lawsuit is filed, you can pool your resources. Replacing one worker isn't going to cost your company much, but if they all act as one united body, paying for lawsuits, striking, the company will find that much more difficult to deal with. Actual professional trade unions are organised in such a way that they have a leadership that does all of this for you and more. From fighting for health and safety regulations to paid holidays, paid sick leave, rules around hiring and firing, pensions. And it's not all about striking and picket lines. Wait, I haven't mentioned that yet, have I? Picket lines are when you have striking union members outside their place of work, discouraging other people from going in and generally informing the public about why it is they're striking. You know, just anyone that walks past. But even though that's sometimes the point, it's not always about inconveniencing the public. There are other tactics they use, such as slowdowns, where people work as badly and as slowly as possible, sometimes even deliberately causing damage to work equipment. There's also the work to rule, where you become the most irritating pedant possible about following your contract and all various different regulations to the letter. Sorry, can't do it. These lights are 5.5 kilograms. Health and safety regulations clearly state I can't lift anything more than 5 kilograms above head height. Sorry, you'll have to get someone else. And yes, there are strikes. They persist for a reason. No other tactic causes the business to miss out on revenue, generates media attention, and, if done right, gets the public on your side. And if that happens, they can start boycotts. They can support competitors. It's a very powerful tactic. And understandably, businesses don't want to deal with that, so they decide, well, why not just pay workers what it is they want? Why not treat them like human beings? That's one way of looking at it. But you might say, the 80s. Look what happened in the 80s. Now, the version I heard in the papers after Maggie's death went something like,
the unions were holding the country hostage. The pits were unprofitable and needed to close. The violence, the rubbish in the streets.
Look, I have a couple of my own. Coal is the absolute worst of the fossil fuels. The sooner we're reliant on 0% coal, globally, the better. And even though it might have paid well What must it have been like to work down those pits? The actual working area is like a crawl space in a house. The average height is about 40 inches, so you're going to crawl. When you're bent, you can't use your legs as much. You have to rely on your arms and back. To pick up 25 pounds standing upright is easy for most people. When you're bent over on your knees, it becomes much harder. The average coal miner works 60 hours a week. That's standard. Most coal miners work 10-hour shifts 6 days a week. Everything is intensified in the mines. You're in a foreign atmosphere. Deep underground, the air is different. The oxygen goes down. The temperature on average is in the 50s, but you still sweat an enormous amount when you start labouring. By the way, yes, I'm just focusing on coal. I don't want to overcomplicate the video. No question I can think of better ways to spend my life than down a coal mine, and I'm glad I no longer have that option. But, and I can't stress this enough, entire communities depended on these mines. If you want to see what things were like in 1984 during the miners' strike, there's a BBC Panorama documentary here. And if you want to see what things were like for the children roughly 20 years later, click here. Both of these are in the description below if you want to wait till the end of the video. It's not just that these mines were the economic heart of the communities without which everything else stagnates. The shops, the schools, all other public services, the physical and mental health of the people living there. It's not the fact that they gave the people a purpose in life and a shared experience to bond over. It's not even the fact that we've seen what happens when you ignore these people. It's that on a very fundamental level, you need a counterweight to the exploitative potential of the corporations. Look at it like this. A society needs three things: government, corporations, and unions to be in balance in order to work well. If one element is too weak, it's ineffective. If it's too strong, it's a poison for the entire society. If the government's too weak, the corporations become strong and they become the effective rulers. If it's too strong, you get a dictatorship and there are no shortage of atrocities to convince you that's not a good idea. If the corporations are too strong, they can gain control of the government. And if that sounds crazy, you just need to remember that a wealthy businessman is now president of the United States and therefore literally the most powerful person on the planet. But if they're too weak, they can't grow the economy and create the jobs necessary to make the country function. If the unions are too strong, as we've already established, they can literally topple governments. If they're too weak, they can't negotiate effectively, workers get screwed, corporations get stronger, and, well... Finally, you might be thinking, are unions even still relevant anymore? I thought globalization undermined any chance they have of actually being effective in practice. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, the four most unionized countries in Western Europe are Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Iceland. And Denmark in particular has repeatedly been ranked the happiest country in the world. What makes these countries so successful is the Nordic model. Basically guaranteed free education and healthcare, the Ghent system. This is when unions provide unemployment benefits instead of or alongside of the government. That's why so many people belong to unions in these countries. Free market policies for corporations, and then the corporations, the government and the unions all work together to create industry-wide agreements that benefit everyone, not just the corporations. And they have high taxes, but remember, these are the happiest people on the planet. Clearly they see that these taxes are going to the public good, and that even after they've been taken out the paycheck, they can still, afford things. Oh yeah, and they're not stuck in the past. In fact, they have to modernize quickly because of the high wages. They're not still relying on coal either. Denmark has tons of wind power, and in Norway, this year, half of all new cars are electric. Half. So hopefully you get the picture. Unions are essential. We've been deluded for years into believing that unions are evil by governments, and now corporations literally run them. Not enough is done to educate young people like myself about why unions are so important, and this gives us no incentive to support or join them, and this just compounds the problem even more. This isn't about left or right. This is about, very simply, what works and what doesn't. And countries that don't have strong unions don't work for anyone but the rich. If your standard of living hasn't improved in years, the very worst thing you can do is support a politician or political party that just wants to make these unions and these social services even weaker still. It's long past time that we cast aside the fear and the distrust and the ignorance of unions as a concept, recognize their importance, and use them in innovative ways to solve the urgent problems that our politicians just don't seem interested in addressing. And if you'd like to support a channel that will always champion these progressive positions, listen to you no matter what your background, keep you informed on social and technological developments that may change society in profound and unexpected ways, all while encouraging you to become the most well-informed, mentally healthy and ambitious person you possibly can, please like this video, subscribe, comment down below, follow me on my various socials, and I will see you next time. Kind of low to mid 20s every day. There's a tiny bit. So this video is going to be in two parts. First, I'm going to talk about what you can do to combat DeVos and her cronies, and the